Well, howdy YouTube, Unky Joe here, Unky Joe's Playhouse time for another exciting, overwhelming, I don't know, video. You know, those things I do on YouTube. You guys are loving my Unraid videos, so I'm doing another one. You know, an interesting thing happened on my Unraid Unleashed video. I did not have a clear understanding about how Unraid creates a raid array. Well, Unraid calls it a raid array. I wouldn't go that far, but it's close enough. Now that I have an understanding about how it does it, and with the help of some of my subscribers giving me generous hints on how to speed up drive copy speeds, I've decided to do a whole video dedicated to nothing but drive copy speeds and how to set up your Unraid array and what the effect of a cache drive has over no cache drive, etc. So I'm going to show you some footage of the server that I'm using to run Unraid on, and then we're going to do a little deep dive into how to set up an Unraid array and what the ramifications are of that. And then we're going to compare that at the end of the video to the write speeds with Synology or Exponology NAS, because as you know, hands down, Synology is still my favorite way, my favorite NAS out there by far, whether you're running Exponology or Synology. And Unraid is not going to change that fact. But I want to give it the benefit of the doubt, and I wanted to make sure I gave Unraid a fair shake. And that's what this video is all about. So come on, let's get started right now. So from memory, I hope everybody recognizes this machine. This is the 4U rack unit that we put the drive bay, 4-bay drive bay into. This was running Synology or Exponology. And this has kind of been our play toy. So what I did was, oh, there's a picture of Toby. Doesn't he look handsome just laying there? That's what he does very well. He sleeps. But it makes it real difficult to work in the lab when you're having to step over the lab. Get it? Now, he's not a lab. He's a golden retriever. Anyway, back to what I'm talking about. So I decided to use this 4U rack unit to test Unraid on. And I'll give you the specifications of the motherboard and everything that are inside of it, but I just wanted to take some quick little footage of it. Pardon me. The thing I like about this board is it's small. It's very small, very compact. It's got an i3 processor in it, 4600 HD video built into that i3. It came with a wireless card, but I'm not using. But you see how tiny that board is. It's a nice little board. It has 6 serial ATA controller ports on it. Even has a PCI Express 16 slot that I'm not using right now. And this unit also comes with a couple, an Intel and a Realtek NIC. Now, I don't know why they just didn't put 2 Realtek NIC cards in there, but they didn't. So I've got this drive bay, but I also want to slap in another hard drive. So there's the 2 NICs. It's got USB 3. It's got 2 HDMI out ports, DVI, wireless, of course, I'm not using. It's got audio out, etc., and USB 2 ports. So it's a good little machine, fast, efficient, power efficient, SIPs power. But what I wanted to do was I had this other 500 gig hard drive laying around, and you know me, use it or lose it. So I've decided to go ahead and also mount this 500 gig hard drive in there. It just gives me a little more flexibility with this unit moving forward. So this is the unit we'll be doing the Unraid testing on. So buckle up and let's get into Unraid right now. Alright, so this is our Unraid server. I'm now running Unraid on my Exponology NAS. Well, the motherboard, CPU, RAM that I use for my Exponology build. So I've got some hard drives in it. I've got 4 1 terabyte hard drives and a 500 gig hard drive in it. This is a i3. I think it has 8 gig of RAM. Yeah, 8 gig of RAM. And I've got my array set up this time. And this time I did not set up a parity drive because I wanted you to see the results of the copy test without a parity drive. Now I do have a cache drive set up, and that is a 500 gig spinning Rust hard drive. And on my shares, My app data will prefer to use the cache disk. My domains will only use the cache disk. My ISOs will not use the cache disk. And system files prefer the cache disk. So that's how I've got everything set up on that. I also have a program called Net Data running. And if I bring up my net user interface on the program, you'll see all the wonderful information, and we'll want to keep an eye on this as we start copying data. But let's come back to Unraid for now, and let's go over here to Tools, I think it is. Let's go to System Profiler so you can see what it is, and hopefully it doesn't show my serial number here. I don't see it. Good. But it is an Intel Core i3-4360 processor that also has internal graphics on it. I think it's 4600 graphics, 4600 HD. But that gives you an idea of the motherboard and processor. It's on a Gigabyte H97N Wi-Fi. And I've got a couple of Ethernet cards on it. One is a Realtek. The other one is a Intel NIC. Let's come back here to main. So now what I'd like to do next is show you what it's like copying data to one of my shares. We'll copy it to the let's see, let's create a new share. Let's add one, and we'll just call it test. This is a test share. We only want it to, we don't want to use the cache disk. No, yeah, we want it getting written directly to the share, or to the volume. So I'm going to go ahead and add the share, make it public, export it, done. Good. So now we have one called test, and it'll only write to the array. Okay, so now that we've got that set up, let's go try to copy some data to it. So if we come up here to Unraid Beast on our network neighborhood and double click on test, let's see if we can add a new folder. Yeah, we can. Call it test data. Alright, now let's come over to our D drive and let's copy this Linux Lite file and paste that into the test folder. Go ahead and paste it, and let's see what kind of copy speeds we get. So we're getting 112 megabytes per second directly from my machine to the test. Let's copy some more. Let's go over to my finished originals, and let's copy, let's grab a bunch of these. Copy them. Come back to the test folder, test data, and we'll paste them. And we'll see how this does. This is quite a bit more data. Because, you know, one of my complaints on Unraid when I had the parity drive turned on was that it copied really fast for, you know, the first minute or two, and then it started to slow down. And we're writing directly to the array on this. We're not writing to the cache drive or anything like that. Not that the cache drive is any faster, but it's still a spinning drive. And even then, we'd be limited to 1 gigabit speed because we're only on a 1 gigabit network. Haven't quite got the logistics of my 10 gig network figured out yet. I don't know whether I want to do fiber or whether I want to do Ethernet. So, and then there's the matter of my Synology NAS. It's always going to be gigabit or 2 gigabit. But that's okay because I can't write data or read it any faster than the hard drives in there. If they were all SSDs, it'd be a different story. So it looks like folks were correct that if I just wrote data to the drive array and then enabled parity, it would run faster. So kudos to the people in the comments section who are more knowledgeable than Unraid than I am. You see, I get into the basics of any. I go right to the core of any NAS, and that is drive write speeds. And if drive write speeds are below 100 megabytes per second, I don't want to spend any more time on the product. You see what I'm saying? Because I read and write data constantly. Now, I'm the exception. On a NAS, most people just write to it and then store their data there, like their movie or their video collection or their audio collection. But me, I'm editing video, and I've got more of a production environment. And so I need these fast drive speeds, no matter what array I'm using. So far, Unraid's doing quite well. And you see there's no slowdown. So it's 100 plus megabytes per second throughout the whole copy procedure. And let's go look at Unraid real quick. And see how it's taking the load. And you can see, yeah, there's some CPU utilization going on. Drive temperatures are all good. I put it in Fahrenheit because I live in the United States. And that's what we use over here, is the imperial scale. So you can see it's writing data to actually only one volume right now. Drive speeds are just fine. And we'll go ahead and bring this up. Let it sit over the top while we're copying this data, so you can see it in action. So that's a plus in the, that's a feather in the cap of Unraid right there. Now, what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and turn on parity, and then we're going to try and write some more data to this NAS while it's trying to create the parity. See what our drive speed, see what our write speeds are. And then, after the array is done getting parity in sync, then we're going to try writing to it again and see what kind of effect it has. So my understanding of things is it will need to go as follows, that we will need to stop the array, and then I have 3 1 terabyte drives in here. These are these old Hitachi drives, and I have a 500 gig Seagate in there. I believe that is, yeah, ST500. Okay, so the array stops. So now what I've left one of those 1 terabyte drives alone, and now I'm going to go ahead and assign it parity as a parity drive to this array. And then I'm going to go ahead and start the array now. And of course I get a reallocated sector. These drives are a little questionable. They're getting old. It's time to replace them, but they'll be fine in an array. So as you can see, the parity sync has started, data rebuild has started. It's estimating an hour and 57 minutes. That could go faster or slower, and it's probably going to get ready to go a lot slower because I'm going to write some more data to that drive. So we won't do a whole lot of data writing, but we'll do a fair bit. So let me grab some more. We'll grab it to... We'll grab 4 files. Come up here. And go ahead and paste it. So we're starting out strong. I'm impressed. Again, let's bring our Unraid up, and then we'll bring our copy up, and we'll see how it does. Clear off those notifications. Sorry about that, folks. Alright, so there we go. Up, you see our speed just fell off a cliff. So, yeah. There's not much to say about this. Now, of course, to be fair, in all honesty, to be fair, it is rebuilding the parity on the array. So I think once it's done rebuilding the parity on the array, that I will actually achieve about 50 to 60 megabytes per second. We'll let this run and see what happens, though. So this thing is running at full bore, and all told I'm consuming about 74 watts of power. That's with all the drives spinning up, doing a copy and doing a parity rebuild. So 74 watts is the power consumption. Now what we'll do as we move along in this video, because Unraid is not going to stay on this machine. This is a proof of concept. This is a test, just so I can see if I want to take the next step and build a real Unraid server with some bells and whistles. So this is my test to see if I can overcome some of the things I don't like about Unraid. So once this is done, then what we will do is allow the drives to be spun down, to be powered down when they're not in use, and see how much energy that saves when it goes into that so-called power saving mode, because that could be a big benefit. You know, if you've got a really power hungry server that you're running Unraid on, it could save you you know, a sizable amount of money running the server in the long term. So keep that in mind. Now, one thing I forgot to mention, the drive I'm copying off of is my SSD drive in my workstation. And I'm also recording to this drive, but it's an SSD drive. It's a 1 terabyte SSD, one of those that Sasha Lopez donated from over in the UK. And it can handle the bandwidth. The reason that has nothing to do with the slow transfer speed. So just wanted to make sure that was clear. Looks like it's completing now, coming into the home stretch. And still, 20 megabytes per second, it's not too bad when you consider what this machine is having to do in the background. Now, parity on one drive, I don't see any problems with it. Some people, I don't know why people love RAID 5. If you've ever had to recover an old RAID 5 array and had another drive fail during the rebuild, you'll know what I'm talking about. Okay, so it's saying it's going to take a day, 3 hours and 15 minutes to rebuild the parity on the drive because it's writing so slow. But we'll let it go ahead and run parity, or do the parity. Now I'm going to come over to settings and disk settings, because I have them set up as never to spin down. Let's see what this says. This setting defines the default timer for spinning hard drives down or a period of no I/O. Okay, so let's change that to 15 minutes. Now enable spin up groups. No, I'm gonna leave that alone. I put the default file system at XFS. I had it at BTRFS before, but I thought it might affect the write speeds. So I'm going to go ahead and apply this now. So what it should do is any drives it's not using, it should spin them down after 15 minutes. The problem is that it's using all the drives. So we're just going to have to wait till this parity is done. It says it's going to take 2 hours and 39 minutes. 39 minutes? Yeah, 9 minutes, not 9. 9. Anyway, so we'll let this run. And then we'll come back and we'll play with it some more. The Unraid, that is. So just really quickly, while the array is in process of rebuilding, you'll see the kind of performance I'm getting. But it looks like the system net data is not updating. It was updating, but it seems to have stopped. So there we go. I've got to keep my mouse over it. Well, or do I? Let's see here. Let's just make sure Unraid is still doing its thing. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of CPU usage, so here we go. But you can see my read speeds are very good between those 3 drives. The writes are normal, about 120 megabytes per second. And it's very frugal with RAM. So even while the parity is rebuilding, we can monitor the what do they call this? The net data. So it gives you a nice little graphical representation. I forgot to mention that. So again, we'll let the parity run, and we'll come back and when something changes. All right, so here we are the next day. As you can see now, only 2 of the drives are spun up. My parity disk and disk 1. The other 2 are in standby mode. They're spun down because they don't need to be used right now. Now, when I checked it this morning, first thing, all of the drives were spun down. And this unit with the i3 was consuming about 38 watts of power at idle. So the other thing you can see is our parity is now valid, has been done, completed. So now what I want to do is try to copy some data again to the array from my local machine and see what kind of speeds we get. So let's do that next. Alright, so I'm going to grab some files from my SSD drive. Let's get some of these down here. We'll do all of these. And we will copy them. And then we will come up to Unraid Beast. Copy them over to the test folder. And paste. And we're starting out at 112 megabytes per second. Let's bring up Unraid. And you'll see we start really strong, and then once the parity kicks in, we cut our drive copy speeds in about half, and that's to be expected. So if you were using a traditional, say, standard RAID 5 array, even with the speedy controller, you would see these kind of write speeds. Now, if you had a bunch of spinning platters and had them in a RAID 10 array or a RAID 6 array, you would see the combined speed of those drives give you better speed. But if you're not copying a lot of data back and forth to Unraid, you should be fine. Which it'll mean if normally you had a video that would copy over in about a minute, it's going to take 2 minutes using Unraid with the way they have it, as opposed to Synology's hybrid RAID, which you get the full 100 and whatever megabyte speeds while copying files. So again, not a big deal killer. If you do like people saying, that is, don't generate the parity on your array until you get your data copied. That is another way to skin this cat, as they say. So we'll let the copy finish. And so sitting here with Jerry, we were discussing this. So the idea behind a cache drive is that you could use the cache drive a couple of ways. Most ways I see people using a cache drive in Unraid is to store their virtual machines onto an SSD so that they boot up really quickly. But if you do a lot of data transfers like I do, you could in theory put a drive that is at least the size but not larger than your parity drive in here, just a regular spinning drive, say like just to use this example, a 1 terabyte spinning drive, and then tell Unraid under your shares, like on this folder, instead of no for the cache disk, you can tell it yes. They will be written there first, and then when the mover is invoked, it'll move them onto the regular array. So that would be a way around if you're doing large file copies as well. I think my preference would be to use the cache drive for speedy virtual machines. So there is an Unraid capacity calculator. So what I have done is calculated that I have 4 1 terabyte drives and a 500 gigabyte drive in there. And according to this chart, I would get 3.17 terabytes of actual storage space with one drive as a parity drive. Now, if I compare that to Synology, if I put 4 1 terabytes and a 500, I'm going to actually get 3.5 terabytes of storage. With this setup here, I get 50 megabyte per second transfer speeds. With this setup here, I get the full 100 megabyte transfer speeds. So make of that what you will. Well, there you go. Nothing proves things better than a video that has been totally unedited. No, it has been edited. But you see the problem I was running into with file transfer speeds. And like I said in the video, that is my number one. The first thing I do whenever I test a new NAS device is to see how the file transfer speeds are across the network. Because if I'm going to cut my file transfer speeds in half, I better have a damn good reason as to why that's happening. So there is a workaround in Unraid to get your higher file transfer speeds, and that is, like I showed you, just turn off the parity drive while you're doing massive data copies, or have a very large cache drive in there, and let the mover handle moving the data later over to the array. Either way, your choice. But we also found out that Synology just really does a better job of RAID. I don't know what magic it is under the hood with Synology that makes it operate so fast. And that's always been the bane of my existence on RAID, is that write penalty you get when doing a RAID array. And for some reason, Synology they don't have it. Now, Unraid has a unique way of doing the RAID arrays, and I respect that. And now that I understand how it works, we can move forward with some more Unraid videos. So this, like I said, was the preliminary test to see if I can get past the drive writing speeds I have. So we're going to continue on with our Unraid series of videos. In fact, I've got some hardware coming in that we're going to specifically build an Unraid server around. So you got that to look forward to. But anyway, thanks for coming to see us again. We hope you found the video entertaining and informative. As always, please give us a thumbs up down below if you liked the video, and leave your comments down in the comment section. If you're inclined to donate, we take PayPal, we take Patreon. Either one works fine for us. So please come back and see us again soon. And don't forget that we will see you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and her, and him, and everyone else on the other side.